put Dustin on with us, okay?
Yeah.
North Dakota Watchdog Network.
It'd be cool to find out.
All right, hold on. Let's pop Dustin on. Dustin Garlow, one of the smartest men I know out there, is calling in the program. Must be listening out in Bismarck. So what is Tim talking about, Dustin?
So I'm driving back from Fargo. Hopefully I don't lose you. But what Tim is talking about is that in the last 20 years, actually in the last 17 years, the state of North Dakota has increased its spending at the local level from $1 billion every 2 years to $5 billion every 2 years. And that is in the form of more and more state spending, local level. Much of that was in the name of reducing property taxes. Now, the buy-downs by that name technically are not there anymore, but the dollars are still there. So over the last 17 years, the strategy has been to spend more money from the state level down to the local level to reduce the property tax, or at least to reduce the rate of growth of the property tax. So everybody is still getting those quote-unquote buy-down dollars, but they're not really called a buy-down anymore because they got converted over into the $500 credit. But that's what you see. What you don't see is on the ledger side of things, how much money from the state is going to the local governments in the name of reducing your property taxes from funding mechanisms that were passed in previous legislative sessions. So, yes, there's a significant amount of money from both the general fund and the legacy fund that is going to local government to reduce your property taxes, or at least produce a rate of growth. And then this is on top of that.
Hold on, Dustin. You must have me on Bluetooth, right?
Nope.
Oh, because you keep phasing in and out on us.
Uh-oh. Well, I am on the highway. Maybe I passed the truck and he has Bluetooth.
Oh yeah, it's the signals. The signal's horrible. What? So what is? How is Tim then? Because Tim thought we were getting we get the $500, whatever you want to call it, but he's getting like $800 and some dollars. He was saying, or $900. Is that some different plan for ag?
No, so agriculture. Remember, on his residence, he doesn't pay anything, because if he's a farmer and he gets 51% of his income from ag, 1918. Your primary residence and the buildings on your farm don't pay any tax. It's on your ag land where you pay tax. He may be getting other things. I guess homestead tax credit wouldn't apply, but there is going to be on your statement a markdown of state funding that has reduced your property taxes. It's been there for years, and so he's talking about the things that were passed in previous sessions.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's all adding up to the. Okay. So now, does Tim out there in Griggs County, does he get he won't get this $1,600, right? Because he's ag.
Right. So on his primary residence, if he's only got one house and it's his primary residence on the farm, he has never paid tax on that. So he can't get a $1,600 credit against tax that he's never paid.
Okay. All right. Do you understand that, Tim?
Well, yeah. So then I'm not going to get that buy-down money anymore either?
Well, the buy-down money, if it's from previous sessions, and I don't necessarily know exactly what that is referring to, but the money that has been used to buy down property taxes in previous sessions, that's never been pulled back. So
right.
It's still there. It's just that no matter how much money the state spends to reduce property taxes, it's never enough to fix the problem.
Right. I can't believe 60% voted to keep. I can't believe 60-some% voted to keep paying property tax. What a bunch of clowns.
Well, there's going to be, Tim, there's going to be a measure. There's going to be probably people putting multiple Tim set measures out there, because it looks like people are not happy with this. That's for sure. They are not happy with it. Tim, appreciate the phone call. 701-293-9000. All right, so I reached out to Lozier. I haven't heard back. I'm hoping to hear back from him. Do you know what he's working on for property tax elimination?
Yes. So this session, Scott Lauser, representative out of Minot, introduced House Bill 1168, which was a $60 million buyout of the general fund mills that K-12 education has to levy in order to get their matching funds from the state of North Dakota. So what he wants to do is he wants to take everything related to education that would be direct in-classroom costs, particularly the things that the state of North Dakota requires local school districts to levy in order to get their state money, and wipe that part of it out. So you'd still end up paying your mills on bonded debt. So if your school district did a school bond and they used mill levy dollars for that, it would still apply. There's a few other miscellaneous mill levies that are specific to certain districts depending on certain terms, but the 60 mills that every district is required to levy, and this is always key when you hear legislators say we don't levy tax and we don't control local tax. Well, when the state law says that in order to get your state matching funds, you have to levy 60 mills to max out what you can get from the state. They are.
Yeah.
And so what he wants to do is he wants to pull that 60 mills out, and it's got a roughly $750 million price tag. And he's got it drafted. He announced Friday evening that he intends to push that forward. He and I have been talking about this for a few months now, and I've told him that I and the North Dakota Watchdog Network will help support that effort. I've been in discussions with Rick Becker about this particular, so I don't want to speak for either one of those. But I think that this is the way to go because it is a smaller chunk of the property tax pie, but it's the chunk that everybody ends up paying because your school tax is the biggest piece of your property tax.
Yep.
And last year when we talked, I said, I told you, I know where I can find $1 billion or maybe $1.5 billion in the state budget to cut to offset it, but I don't know where the $3.5 billion comes from. In this situation, even after what passed last week and what the governor signed on Saturday with this $1,600 tax credit, there is the money in order to offset eliminating the 60 mills for K-12. And even more interestingly, the lobbyist groups that are supportive of education like ND-CEL, the School Board Association, when it came time to testify on the various property tax approaches, they actually preferred this idea because it acknowledges how school funding actually works now rather than trying to change it. And so I think that this is the right fight for 2026, that if we put this on the ballot, that it gives people an opportunity to vote for something that even the education community said is not that bad, and it's not an obnoxiously high fiscal note. It's not going to break the bank. Yeah, we'll have to move things around and, make sure that the $1,600 doesn't come back if this passes. The legislature might be tempted to say, okay, you wanted your 60 mills eliminated. Well, we'll take that $1,600 back then next time.
Yeah.
And that was one of the dangers with this bill was what Governor Armstrong put forward was a 15-year plan to phase out property taxes for primary residents. I thought that was a little bit slow. I suggested make it 6 years so people can see that benefit before he's out of office. But, because this battle has to be fought again in 2 years, we might as well push forward a plan, give the people of North Dakota a chance to re-examine this. And when you eliminate the 60 mills, it's not just for primary residents, it's for commercial and agriculture, which have been left behind by this bill that just passed last week.
Because this bill
taxpayer left behind situation.
Okay, because this bill that just passed, this is just for primary residents, correct? This is ag is out, commercial is out, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So,
and with the agriculture, the thinking there is because primary residents on farms has been exempt from property tax since 1918, they don't pay the way it is.
Okay.
One of the sarcastic lines on the skin in the game argument was, well, then should we force the farmers to pay the 25% as well? Because if the issue is your skin in the game and whether you're paying enough, they don't pay anything on their homes. And their egg land is calculated based on a production model, so it's basically a backdoor income tax.
So, yeah, the skin in the game, Dustin. By the way, this is Dustin Garler, North Dakota Watchdog Network. It's like one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to this stuff. The whole skin of the game, when Hug came out with that, I was shaking my head going, did you really just say that, skin in the game? Believe me, pal, we're still going to have a lot of skin in the game, and I've had skin in the game for years. I thought that was just so it's like, read the room, man. Come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and his belief is that if people pay zero, they're not going to be interested in the process. That's already the problem, is that people don't pay attention to the process until it's too late. Then they complain after they've gotten their bill rather than 6 months before when they could have showed up to the meeting to have an influence.
Yeah, well, part of the problem, too, is those meetings, it just seems like they're conveniently held at times where, the working class can't get to them because they're working.
Yep.
All right, so real quick while I got you on here, is there any way possible, Dustin, it could be done, because you hear this, we want 100% elimination of property taxes. Is that even a doable thing where 100% property taxes gone?
If there's a plan, maybe.
What kind of plan? That's a big nut to cover.
Well, it comes down to the money. And I think that the approach is to chip away at it about a quarter at a time. Mm-hmm. And that 60 mils for education is a manageable chunk. It's roughly 25% of the entire property tax bill. And you got to start somewhere. And establishing that, yes, this can work. We're going to do this on education, which is the one area where everybody agrees. The state should probably fund that at a full level, number one, because the Constitution says so, despite what Republicans argued back in the 80s. And we've had this discussion before where the Republicans were against funding education at 100%, despite that's what the Constitution says. And let's just take a chunk of it first and go from there. Make sure that people understand that, yes, this is possible, show that it can be implemented, and keep chipping away. And then whatever is truly discretionary, when it comes to education, I've always said maybe sports should still be a local thing, because it's up to the locals to decide how much they want to tax themselves for sports. And, that could be an approach. We got to look at what is a discretionary expense of government and what's non-discretionary. If we do education, the next thing maybe we should do is police and fire. Let's divide and conquer this animal.
So you said, do it in portions.
In a 10-year span, in 4 separate steps, we can get down to maybe not 100% gone, but 80% gone.
I'd feel good. So in the North Dakota state constitution, it says in there that the state is supposed to 100% fund education?
No, it says that the state shall provide for a free and equitable, I believe, or uniform form of education. In the 1980s, the Democrats said that meant that the state had to fund it fully.
Okay.
Republicans said, no, provide for does not mean fund. It means we give them the tools to generate their own revenue. And so the state allows local governments to levy property taxes. And Republicans in the 80s said that by giving the locals their own revenue source, that's what providing for means. And that's what the courts agreed to back in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so this has been a debate. And in fact, this is one of the areas where the two parties in North Dakota have basically flipped. Because if you talk about 100% funding for K-12, 10 years ago, it would have been the public employees and teachers unions that gave you the most opposition to that idea. Now I think that everybody agrees that the danger of losing it all as far as 100% elimination of property tax is such a big danger that we need to really tackle this in a concerted way. And this session has proven to us the legislature is not equipped to do big things on this issue. And so the people have to take it into their own hands, but do it in a concerted and deliberative way.
Mm-hmm. And don't do it all at once, like you said. Just take bites, good quarter chunks here and there, and do it over a shorter amount of time. Over 6 years, 8 years, whatever it might be. Because when you look at your tax bill, when you look at your tax bill, I mean, the biggest chunk of money for your property taxes, that's coming from the school districts. Yeah, yep. And a lot of that, like us in West Fargo, millions, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars are always coming back at us. They need more schools, and if it gets shot down, they just rework it, and they keep beating us down till people cave in and do it. And I do think that when it comes to these schools that we're building, that the state should be kicking in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people don't understand how much money the state already spends at the local level. It's $5 billion every 2 years.
With a B.
And so, yeah. And that's an increase from $1 billion in, I believe, 2007 is the baseline for that number. So the amount of spending from the state level to local government has quadrupled. But people are still paying so much more in property taxes that they don't even accept that happened. And that's what we have to get past, is the fact that this is one area where the legislature is right about the voters. They don't pay attention to what is actually being done because the results are never what they're told they will be.
No, they aren't.
When the legislature passes property tax relief, people expect that the property taxes are going to go down.
Yep.
The relief is from the rate of growth, not from the actual total. And so when you're talking two different numbers, the rate of growth is so high. So this 3% cap, is going to restrain it. However, remember that the legislature put a pressure relief valve on this. Those local governments can go to their voters and say, listen, we can't survive on this 3% cap.
Yep.
We need you to override this. The legislature gave them that ability. I believe we will start seeing votes immediately in 2026 from local governments asking their voters to override that 3% cap, and we'll be right back where we started.
Oh, yeah. If there's any relief, it's not going to last a long time. It's not. Email says, Jay, will you tell Dustin that farmers pay the vast majority of school taxes? Make that more even.
So, yeah, farmers pay the vast majority of taxes based on their ag land, on the farmland, but they get a break. They get a free ride on the buildings, on the house. And so we got to look at this thing, and what people always bring up is the commercial versus ag. So commercial property generates income just like ag. Mm-hmm. And, unless you're doing an abatement challenge to your property tax on the commercial side, typically that income generation factor does not come into account into the valuation program. The valuation system on property across the board needs to change. That needs to be a part of this, separate from any money that is spent from the state level.
Another email says 100% gone, ? Yes, ask Jim Casper. I pay big dollars on ag land, don't live there, so no relief for me. This is total BS. He's talking about this new bill. Here's the thing, that's before I let you go, is this measure, Scott starts pushing this thing, and it sounds like you guys are going to back it at the Watchdog Network. Property taxes are so damn confusing with mills and this and buy downs and this and that. What's going to happen is that this is going to have to really be explained to the citizens of Fargo on a very, very, easy to understand level. Otherwise, the people aren't going to get what Scott's trying to do here.
I agree. Yeah, and the lack of understanding about how property taxes work is part of the root problem, and it is so complicated because it's been 130 years of Band-Aids, one thing over another, trying to fix a problem, when in fact we probably should just look at how to start over. Now, Ben Koppelman from Fargo,
West Fargo,
pushes the idea of going to a square footage model, and that in theory can work. The problem with that is that that's how special assessments work, and we don't like those either. So why would we convert property taxes over to the way that another system that we don't like works? And, there's got to be a simplified way to do this, but we need the political will to go and start from scratch, start from ground level, and let's talk about building a tax system that is designed from the start rather than Band-Aiding over problems that have been incurred over the last 130 some years.
Yeah. I've had some property tax ideas. I don't know if you get time or not. I got to do news. You got time to hang on? I want to run a couple ideas by you.
Yep, sure thing.
All right, I'm going to put you on hold, Dustin. Let's get some news and weather out of the way. Dustin Garlow, listen to the program, calling in, North Dakota Watchdog Network. If you had any property tax questions, this is a guy to ask. I mean, he knows this stuff. I don't understand how he can just weave through all this, and it's so damn confusing.
And I think
I'm not the smartest guy on the planet.
You had it right on the head. I mean, in my view, most of the reason Measure 4 didn't pass last time was here's what it will allow the legislature to do. There's no plan. Yeah. This would allow them to figure it out. No, you have to have a plan. Well, people aren't going to vote for anything.
They've got to understand.
Have it laid out.
You've really got, because the average person out there, they don't. They think they might know. It's so complicated. It's so damn complicated in this state. It probably is in every state. All right, more with Dustin Garlow, managing editor, North Dakota Watchdog Network. When we come back, Jay Thomas Show. 12 minutes after. That's the Zeus Sales and Rental Time Check. Feel the power of Zeus. 3 locations. So good tune. Hollywood Lumber Company, Highway 10, Holly, 12th Avenue North Fargo, and now in Moorhead. Feeling a little mellow this afternoon, Ronnie?
Yeah, it seems like some yacht rock type day. Yeah.
It is gorgeous out right now. We're at 84 here in Fargo. And don't forget, great May specials at PetroServe USA. There's one near you. Helping America fuel better. Powerade 28-ounce bottles. Buy 2, get 2 free. Giants sunflower seeds, 5-ounce bags, $1.39. Pop-Tarts select 2-packs, only 49 cents. Also, Chex Mix, select 3.75-ounce flavors, just $1.19. PetroServe, there's one near you. Dustin Garlow, North Dakota Watchdog Network, hanging out with us this afternoon, trying to explain the property tax thing. Governor signed the bill, $1,600, 3% cap on local political subdivision. Scott Lozier, Republican, out of mine. I said, nah, hold my beer and watch this. I'm doing a measure for 2026. These things are it's so complicated. Now, there might be some people out there, Dustin, going, really, Thomas, it's not that hard. It is. I've just, all my years living here, I've never understood the whole mills. And there's a lot of lawmakers, elected people that you'll ask them that same thing. Like, I'll be honest with you, man, I can't even figure this thing out. Let me ask you this. If you got a question, by the way, for Dustin, 701-293-9000, I'll get to the emails here in a second. So with this property tax thing that was signed into law, whatever you want to call it, so I don't know what we pay on $2,500, $27, somewhere between $25,000 and $3,000 a year is what Alex and I pay. So at this $1,600, does that mean that my property tax bill will be $1,600 less?
Yes.
Okay. All right. She'll spend that right away. A couple things. So a couple ideas that I've had and listeners have had. You tell me if these make any sense at all, because again, it's about making this as uncomplicated as possible. And you said since what, 1918, it's just been a mishmash of fixes here and there that really don't do anything.
Yes, it has, and I need to qualify that yes answer here, because it's $1,600 off of whatever your taxes will be based on how much your valuations go up, plus that 3% cap. So actually, the answer is no. It won't be $1,600. It will be $1,600 off of what it would otherwise be, which you don't even know right now.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, it's not that simple. Valuations. Now, true or false? So when these political subdivisions, city, county, whatever, come in, valuate your property, isn't it in century code that these divisions have to do this much percentage on valuations?
Yeah, so, but the how your valuation happens, people think that for some reason still that it's based on like you're doing improvements to your house. That's not how it works. Now, if you do improvements to your house, it will go up even more, definitely. But it's based on market price. And so what they look at is the home sales in your area, and they look at comparable homes on square footage of the house, on the square footage of the lot, proximity to schools, stuff like that.
Okay.
And but it's not based on actually what happens to your house. Now, if your neighbor improves their house and sells it for $100,000 more than you thought it was worth, your house value goes up.
Yep.
And so the root problem with our valuation system is that it is a tax on unrealized capital gains. And so you pay more tax on a value that you can't actualize. You can't benefit from it. And so that's what leads some people to go down the road of saying, well, we should freeze it based on when it transfers hands, when you sell it or inherit it or whatever. And that is an option, but that's what California has done since 1978. The problem with that is it disincentivizes selling or transferring property because it will necessitate a massive increase in the valuation. The next person ends up paying so much more, and you get a climate where there's no incentive to build new property, because by building new property, you're disincentivizing the value growth. And people want it both ways. They want to be able to use their home as a nest egg, as an investment vehicle, but they don't want to pay the tax on that up front. And, Scott Lauser has a little bit of credibility on this issue, because back in 2014, that year's Measure 2 was a prohibition on levying a sales tax on the sale of property. Now, we didn't have that in place. He put that forward. The legislature put it on the ballot, and the voters agreed that we shouldn't ever be in the position of allowing that sort of thing. So Scott actually has a lot of street cred on the property tax issue, more so than most establishmentarians. But, when we look at all of these things, it is a system and a systemic problem. No one move is going to fix everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll cross that one off, because that was an idea that's come up multiple times on this program, was what you had just spoken. Hey, you know what? No raise on the value until that house goes back on the market. Then there's because one of the big concerns is a lot of people in North Dakota have fixed incomes, and we're all going to, or most of us will be there at some point. And it's scary as hell when you go to the mailbox. Seems like every time you go to your mailbox, there's one of them bend over letters in the mail. So another idea that we thought of was, 60, I don't know, but whatever age you want to pick, but you get to a certain age, that's it. You're done paying property taxes. You no longer pay property taxes on that home.
Right, and we already have the homestead tax credit, which is for people 65 plus, under a certain income. I think it's $90,000 a year, which is a pretty high threshold. And it between, I believe it's 48,000 and the top level, it gets prorated down as far as what you can benefit. But we have that mechanism in place. I've suggested that the compromise between the idea that it only gets reevaluated at transfer and what we have now is, say, a 15-year rule. After 15 years, your value then gets freezed at that point. That way you're not creating a disincentive to sell, but you're also creating a cap on how long a person has to suffer from those unrealized capital gains. That might be the sweet spot. That way, you have to prove, if once you've lived in your house for 15 years, the chances that you're going to up and sell it, especially at an elevated age, go down. If you sell your house, it's probably because you're moving to Arizona or you're buying a motorhome and going to live on the road, or and have a condo that's worth half as much somewhere.
That's not a bad one.
There are approaches, but it needs to be tackled as a system. And too often the legislature gets stuck in one lane and does not want to deviate, nor do they want to discuss how these things interact with each other. And so they're always looking for a silver bullet, and there is no silver bullet on this issue.
What about another idea that came out of this program is if your mortgage is paid off, you're done paying property taxes.
That's where the 15-year concept comes in, because then you're not rewarding those folks that are well off enough to just buy cash.
Yeah.
Because if I can guarantee you that if that was proposed straight up after you paid your mortgage, you paid no tax, that the folks that are against tax cuts for the rich are going to call that a tax cut for the rich, because if you can afford to buy your home in cash, then you can get out of paying the tax. And I don't know that is necessarily where we want to get. What we want to do, I think, in my view, once a person is basically proven, for lack of a better term, that they intend to retire and or die in their home, or owning their home at least, let's get them a break. And that addresses the little old lady whose husband built the house and she just wants to retire and afford to live there. She's on Social Security. Maybe she's getting half of what he got, or however the formula works for Social Security. But create some mechanisms so that they're not pushed out. And then on top of that, one of the things that could be done even quicker is the concept of let's not foreclose on people's homes.
Thank you.
Just because they can't pay their tax. Let's create a, for lack of a better word, perpetual easement on the home, like when you take your car into the shop and they do $5,000 worth of work on it and you can't pay them, sometimes they will levy a mechanic's lien on it. That's what should be done, so that people, once they reach a certain age, this can't apply to everybody because then nobody would pay their taxes. But once you reach a certain age, let's just defer your property tax payment to when you get rid of that home, one way or the other.
Sure.
And then those dollars come out from the sale of it. So it's kind of like a reverse mortgage without the bank.
I was just going to say, you're basically what you're saying is a reverse mortgage. But I like that because, it's not right. If you did the right thing, you the American dream, you went out, you worked, you busted your ass, and you paid your mortgage on time, you paid for your home is paid for, you own that home, and now because they keep cranking property taxes up, you're on a fixed income, you can't afford the taxes anymore, you can't pay them, so now you're going to lose what you paid for. That's just not right. I like what you're saying, man. Basically, you're right. It's like a reverse mortgage. Okay, your property tax bill is, $3,000. You can't pay it. We're not going to boot you out of your home. We're not going to take it. We're not going to foreclose it. But there will be a lien on it. So when that house is sold, or if it's transferred, passed on to family, that tax bill is going to have to be paid. Yeah, and I think most people would understand that. Even the family members, then they can take out a loan and buy it back, and they're ahead. They still have the asset. They probably can't afford to pay the taxes year over year when they're incurred, and creating mechanisms like that don't look to wave a magic wand, but alleviate the problem and make sure that the people that we're actually trying to help get the benefit. So many times these programs miss the mark because they don't actually help the people that they're intended to help. They help the people that are able to use the loopholes and finagle their way into gaming the system. And so what we need to do is look at all of these policies and how they work together and find a way
to make sure that the least number of people get punished for, actually owning something and paying their bills. Let's create mechanisms so that people can actually retire with what they intended to retire with. Otherwise, what's the motivation to do the things that you're supposed to do in life?
Yeah, exactly. Emails, when I look at my tax statement, guys, the Park District in Fargo takes just as much as schools. The Fargo Park District needs to be reeled in also. Well, that's a point. That's a good point to bring up. When they say on this new, the Governor Armstrong signed this new property tax relief, it's a 3% cap on local subdivisions. Now, when they say that, does that include, that's a 3% cap on not just like the city of Fargo, but that's also the Park District, the school district as well?
Yes. Now,
okay.
The 3% cap is on the amount of revenue that's generated by existing property. That 3% cap does not apply towards new property that comes online each year. So new build, apartments, houses, et cetera, their entire valuation gets taxed at whatever it should be taxed at. So that's all new money. Now, sometimes the revenue generated from that property doesn't match up to the cost incurred by the growth from that property, but that gets into the urban sprawl and smart growth debate, which is a whole other can of worms. But yeah, the park districts are the number one reason why I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of the state paying all property taxes, because I don't think that the state taxpayers at the state level should have to pay for Bismarck or Fargo to have a $100 million rec center.
No, I'm with you, yeah.
That's the sort of thing that should be a local decision, and if local taxpayers want to vote for those sort of things, they shouldn't be bailed out. Now, people need to show up to these meetings and get involved in these things, because if all you do is complain after the fact, nothing's going to change. So people who are upset and don't think that this bill does enough, are they going to their local meetings? Are they getting involved? Are they running for office? When this 3% cap comes in and your local government says it's not enough, what are you going to do to fight it?
The only city that I know of when it comes to this 3% cap that said got no problem with that. We've been doing that for years, and that's Mayor Bochenski up in Grand Forks. I'm on the show multiple times. He's like, yeah, well, I got no problem with this. We've kept it under 3%.
Well, then it will be easy for them.
Well, another email, guys. I have a house worth about $350,000. I pay over $12,000 in taxes just to the schools. That is insane. That is crazy.
I would wonder how that breaks down. Is that in North Dakota?
Yeah, it's in North Dakota.
That seems very steep.
No, like I said, the whole tax issue in this state. You're right. There is no silver bullet, but there sure are a lot of Band-Aids. I mean, you got to start somewhere. This is going to be interesting to see if Scott can get this. Well, he'll get the signatures, but because what do you need? A 60% supermajority on this stuff?
So what he's proposing is a statutory measure, not a constitutional measure.
Okay.
And so that he would need 15,000 signatures, half as many as what Measure 4 needed last year, and then it's a simple majority vote. And then getting into initiated measures, remember, they're going to give you an opportunity to vote away your own rights again. In June of 2026, you'll be able to vote on what's called the single subject rule that says that constitutional measures can only tackle one subject, but they don't want to define that. They want to give the power to the Secretary of State to define that with no parameters other than, whatever he thinks is right. And then in November of 26, they are also putting on that 60% rule to require that constitutional measures in the future get a 60% majority in order to pass. Recall that in Measure 2 last year, the voters said no to both of those features, but the legislature simply does not trust the voters, and so they're going to continue to bring these issues back over and over until the voters give in to the demands of the legislature.
All right. Let's see. Let's go down to Sioux Falls, I believe. Darren, you're up. Jay Thomas Show.
Hey, Jay.
Hey.
Check this out. Built my house 10 years ago, about 1,780 square feet, on slab, living in HOA, don't get any snow removal, don't get any street sweeping. $4,470 in taxes.
Good Lord. Jeez.
You got a secret up there, buddy.
What the?
We need the Jay Thomas Show down here in Sioux Falls is what we need.
Well, evidently you got it down there because you're listening to me on the app, evidently. So how big is you're paying how much on that house?
$4,470. It's a twin home in an HOA development, Jay.
Oh.
And it's 1,783 square feet on slab.
Oh, my God. Slab on grade. That means no basement, people. There's no basement. It's just a one-level home. My God. Hey, wait a minute. You got an HOA? They don't do your snow removal or none of that? What the hell kind of HOA is that?
Jay, we have to pay that. That's $215 a month. That covers snow removal, garbage, and street sweeping.
So what's your property valued at?
Yeah, what's your property valued at?
$329,000, but really that's driven by the market because of what homes are selling around me for.
Yep.
Homes around me have went up $30,000. It's all price inflated, and then we're getting hit with it. So,
well,
but it's Lincoln County.
Your tax liability is probably in line or slightly below what the equivalent in Fargo is on that value.
G sounded a little cheaper than
yeah,
I think you've got
that seems Dustin, that actually seems higher than up here. Ronnie, what did you say? The wife reached out to you, told you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Your property taxes are how much on your $300 and some thousand?
So ours are combined with our specials.
Yeah,
and each year it's $6,240.
That's with all your specials. Yeah. All right, so you're probably paying about $3,000 in property tax. Well, I'll tell you right now, what's scary, guys. One of them is in our neighborhood in Old Town West Fargo. Okay, now these are modest rambler homes, about 1,000 square feet. If you do the basement, you're looking at about 2,000 square feet. So these homes average, they've been averaging 150, 200,000, depending on how you're fixed up. Guys, 2 homes in my neighborhood within the last month have sold. Now, get this. These are homes that are built in like 1960. Just ramblers, one-story ramblers, got a basement. No real updates to them. Both these homes have sold for $270,000+. That is insane. That is nuts.
You want to hear an interesting stat about Bismarck? I don't know Fargo's numbers, but in Bismarck, for new build homes, the average just hit $400,000. So you cannot buy a new build home where you're purchasing the land at the same time for less than about $250 now. And if that Rambler home from the 60s was worth $150,000 15 years ago, it would be worth close to $300,000 now, and that's entirely market-based. It doesn't have anything to do with improvements or any of that. It's that we have a supply shortage, and that's what the market will bear. God. People are willing to get into something right now, and they're willing to overpay for it, and that results in your taxes going up.
Nope.
The fact your neighbor's willingness to overpay for his house causes your taxes to go up. That's the system.
That sucks. Darn glad you're listening in Sioux Falls. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. One more before we get out of here. Steve, you're up. Jay Thomas Show.
Oh, yeah. The thing about Sioux Falls is you got to remember they don't pay income tax down there.
Mm-hmm.
So the total liability is probably still less than in North Dakota. When you figure out whatever his income is and his property tax versus our income tax and property tax, I bet you there's still less.
Yeah. Forgot about the income tax down there, yeah. But still, boy, that seems high. Holy smokes, man.
It's crazy. The real problem is these guys got to quit spending money on this opulent crap that they do, and especially in the schools.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been over to that Moorhead school over there, that high school.
Mm-hmm.
That's just ridiculous. I bet you. Well, I know for a fact they have over $150,000 just in effect lighting in that atrium.
Oh, I'd believe it. Yeah,
what were we?
They go crazy on these schools.
Stupid.
Yeah, they go nuts on these schools.
Somebody's got to put a stop to it because these superintendents want to have a legacy to their name.
Nope. No, I'm with you.
What it boils down to.
No, I'm with you.
Later.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. All right, Dustin, I got to rock and roll. How can people follow you?
They can go to watchingnd.com and sign up for the newsletter and check out all the articles from the session.
All right, brother, thanks for calling in. You must be close to Bismarck now, right?
I'm just outside of Valley City. Yeah.
Oh, okay, you got a ways to go.
Well, get yourself a Pizza Corner pizza.
Better signal.
Yeah, stop at that fantastic PetroServe there in Valley City. Love that place. Thanks, brother. We'll talk soon, man. Appreciate it.